What met brave warrior types of failure and success? How is it going? Welcome to Tiger Talks, where this week I've been experiencing my fair share of both failure and success because that's just the way that life works. Now, if you remember last week's video, especially the bonus quest section of it, then you would remember that I asked you about the way that you handle failure, what kind of emotional responses you go through, that kind of thing. And that's because this week I wanted to speak to you a little bit more about ADHD. Totally related, I know. For a lot of people, for like the everyday person, I guess you could say, dealing with failure isn't that big a deal. It's an everyday occurrence. It's just standard and mundane, formulaic if you will. What you do is you fail at something and then you process it by getting angry or upset with yourself, and then you just kind of move on eventually. But there are a whole bunch of mental disorders, including generalized anxiety, bipolar disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder, and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder that come with what is called emotional dysregulation, which is basically the inability to formulate a correctly measured emotional response to input. A lot of the time, people with emotional dysregulation are called things like dramatic or overexcitable or highly strung, but it's so much more complicated than that. It makes things like failure seem like such an ordeal because the event that triggers the heightened emotional response is to the person who is experiencing this, the single most important, the single most horrible thing that has ever happened in the history of the world, and it is basically impossible to think of anything else at that moment in time. Like, take for instance last week when I was trying to film all of that Failoween stuff and my audio kept doing that thing. I finally got all of my takes good. I imported the data into the computer. I was all ready to edit it, and lo and behold, you couldn't hear a word I was saying because the audio was corrupted so much that I sounded worse than a robot. So I got the camera back out, I recorded everything again, I imported it again, and it happened again, and I just flipped. I lost it. I was 100% ready to never ever make another YouTube video again, because obviously every time I do something, the audio is going to corrupt or the video is going to corrupt, and I'm not going to be able to use it, and it's just not going to be worth my time. I was ready to throw out, or worse, my microphone. I was ready to pack my camera away. I was just ready to never touch it again. But eventually the feelings subsided, I calmed down, and I got back on the YouTube horse. And that's what happens. The feelings will pass, and you're fine as long as you can ride out that wave. The biggest problem is that while you are riding the wave, you have a tendency to do some incredibly impulsive, very reckless, potentially dangerous things that you really shouldn't be doing, but you don't have the mental capacity or faculties to stop yourself from doing them or to think them through. This doesn't just happen for like negative emotions such as sorrow or anger either, and if something amazing happens to me, then for that moment in time, I am the single most happiest, most excitable person in the whole world. And this might sound amazing, but temporarily thinking that you are literally invincible, forgetting that you shouldn't actually spend $500 on a present for somebody else, or spontaneously proposing marriage, those things are not going to do you any favors in the long run. If you know somebody with ADHD or another mental disorder that can cause emotional dysregulation, then there are a couple of things that you can do to help them while they're riding this big emotional wave. And the number one most important thing that you can do for somebody like this is never ever talk down to them when they're like this. Don't condescend to them. Don't directly tell them that they're overreacting. Be gentle. Be kind. Learn some grounding techniques for them and help them learn these grounding techniques, and suggest that maybe they need to use one of these grounding techniques. Watch out for them. Make sure that they don't do anything that's going to hurt themselves or negatively affect themselves or their reputation in any way. Be gentle, be patient, and know that eventually this will pass. This week's bonus quest is, pause for drum roll, what are some of the most important lessons that you have learnt from failure? What are some of the most life-shaping failures you have experienced? What are some of the failures that made you who you are today? Please remember to tweet these at me using the hashtag bonusquest, or directly to my account, or whatever you want to do. Just tell me them so that we can talk about them together, because that is so cool. Bye! Subscribe to my channel, like and share the video, do these things, and make it rain glitter.